story of Cinderella. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived happily with her father and mother. But one day, her mother died, and not long afterward, her father, who wanted the little girl to have a mother's care, married again. The lady he married was a widow, and she had 2 grown daughters. Now, none of these ladies was very nice at all. The mother was proud and haughty, and her 2 daughters were ugly and mean. So the poor little girl was quite unhappy with the new members of her family. As she was very pretty herself, her stepsisters grew jealous of her and did everything they could to make her miserable. They gave her nothing but rags to wear and the poorest food to eat. They made her do the dirtiest work, and they wouldn't even give her a bed, but made her sleep in the kitchen. And because her place was by the fireside among the cinders, they called her Cinderella. Now it happened that the king of the country where Cinderella lived wanted to find a wife for his son. He announced there would be a great ball and invited all the ladies of the kingdom. It was to be a splendid affair, lasting 3 nights, and the prince would choose a bride from among the ladies who attended. Of course, everyone wanted to go. Well, Cinderella's stepsisters received invitations, and they were very excited, because each one thought maybe the prince would fall in love with her. They talked for hours every day about what they would wear. They couldn't think of anything else. But poor Cinderella, who hadn't even been invited to the ball, just had to work harder than ever getting her stepsisters ready. Finally, the great day came, and the 2 sisters, dressed in all their finery, were ready to go. Cinderella looked at their beautiful clothes and asked timidly, "Couldn't I go too?" "Ah? Cinderella go to the ball? What an idea! You with your rags and your dirty face, you little fool! Stay here and tend the fire." Then the sisters and their mother drove away in a fine carriage to the palace, and Cinderella was left alone. She felt so miserable, she just sat down among her cinders and cried and cried. As Cinderella sat by the hearth in the dim firelight, her face buried in her hands, sobbing to herself, she heard a voice calling, "Cinderella! Cinderella!" Startled, she looked up, and there, right in front of her, stood an old lady leaning on a stick. She wore a long red cloak, a tall black hat, and funny pointed black shoes. Cinderella couldn't imagine where the old lady had come from, because the doors and windows were shut tight. "What are you crying for?" demanded the woman. "My mother and sisters have gone to the ball and left me here alone," Cinderella answered. "Do you want to go too?" "Oh, yes, but I haven't anything to wear but these old rags." "Well, don't take on so. I can help you. I'm your fairy godmother. Now do exactly as I tell you, and maybe things will come out all right." "Oh, I'll do anything," Cinderella said. "Go out in the garden and bring me in a pumpkin." Cinderella ran out and fetched the biggest pumpkin she could find. "Now get me the mousetrap out of the cellar," said her fairy godmother. There were 6 mice and a rat in the trap. The old lady lined the mice up on the floor in front of the pumpkin and put the rat on top of it. She found 2 lizards in the kitchen and put them behind the pumpkin. Then she waved her stick, which was really a magic wand, and right away, the pumpkin turned into a beautiful coach, the mice into 6 fine horses, the rat into a handsome coachman, and the 2 lizards into tall footmen with powdered wigs and silk stockings. "There, that ought to do you," said the old lady. But I can't wear these rags." The fairy godmother waved her wand again, and Cinderella's rags turned into the loveliest dress you ever saw. white silk, all trimmed with cloth of gold and studded with precious stones. In her hair, she had a circlet of gold, and on her feet, a pair of dainty glass slippers. "Oh, it's wonderful!" exclaimed Cinderella. "It's the most—" "Yes, yes," said her fairy godmother. "Now, mind you, don't stay too late. You must come away from the ball before the clock has struck 12, because on the last stroke, your coach will disappear and your dress will turn to rags again." Cinderella promised faithfully to obey. She got into the coach, the footman closed the door, the coachman cracked his whip, and away went Cinderella to the ball. When Cinderella arrived at the ball, everyone turned to look at her. None of the guests had ever seen so beautiful a girl or so rich a dress. They thought surely she was a royal princess from some foreign land. And when the prince saw her, he fell in love with her at first glance. He danced with her all evening, and the people whispered that he would certainly choose the lovely stranger for his bride. At 11:45, Cinderella suddenly remembered what her godmother had told her. She said goodnight to the prince and hurried away, and none too soon, because she got home just as the clock began to strike 12. And on the last stroke, just as the old lady had said, the carriage became a pumpkin, the horses mice, the coachman a rat, and the footmen lizards, and Cinderella's beautiful dress turned into rags. Cinderella had just got settled by the fireplace when the two sisters and their mother came in. They paid no attention to Cinderella. They could only talk about the strange princess who had made such a sensation at the ball. But of course, Cinderella said never a word. The second evening, after the other ladies had gone off to the ball, the fairy godmother came again. Once more she waved her wand, and once more Cinderella was dressed in her beautiful white and gold gown with her carriage and footmen at her command. Off she went, and the prince, more in love with her than ever, danced with her all evening again. But on the third night, Cinderella completely forgot her godmother's warning until she heard the clock begin to strike midnight. Then she remembered she must be out of there by the last stroke, or the prince would see her in rags. She jumped up and ran out of the room. But she ran so fast, one of her glass slippers fell off, and the prince, who was running after her, stopped to pick it up. This gave her barely time enough to escape, because just as she crossed the palace yard, the stroke of 12 sounded. And there she was, a poor little girl in rags, hurrying through the palace gate. When the prince reached the yard, there was no one in sight, and the guards told him that only a ragged kitchen maid had passed that way. So the prince walked sadly back with the glass slipper in his hand, thinking he would never see his love again. The day after the ball, the king sent his heralds to every corner of the land to make a proclamation. It was his command that every lady in the kingdom try on the glass slipper, and he promised that the lady whose foot the slipper fit would be the prince's bride. The glass slipper was tried on every lady in the country, but not one of them had a foot small enough to fit it. Then the king's messenger came to Cinderella's house. First, the older sister tried on the slipper. No, it was impossible to get it on her foot. She couldn't get her big toe in. Try as she would, it was just no use. She was very angry. Her mother was too. But she thought to herself, well, maybe my younger daughter can get it on and be the prince's bride. But no, her heel was too big. So neither of the ugly sisters could be the prince's bride. Cinderella, meanwhile, had been watching patiently and saying nothing. Now she shyly asked the king's messenger, "May I try on the glass slipper?" But her stepmother screamed, "Get out of here, you little wretch! How dare you even think of such a thing?" And she and her daughters would have beaten Cinderella right then and there if the royal messenger hadn't interfered. "Madam," he said, "it is the king's desire that every woman in the realm try on this slipper." Then he knelt down and tried it on Cinderella's foot. Well, it slid right on without the slightest trouble and fit so perfectly that everyone stared in astonishment. Then Cinderella drew from her pocket the other slipper and put it on. Instantly, her ragged clothes changed into the white and gold party dress. And there she stood, the beautiful girl the prince had fallen in love with at the ball. The whole kingdom rejoiced at the prince's good fortune in finding so lovely a bride. The royal coach came for Cinderella, and she rode away to the palace to be married to the prince. The jealous sisters and their mother were so upset, they wouldn't even go to the wedding. But the fairy godmother was there, and forever after, she watched over Cinderella and kept her from harm.